Well, I'll tell a story about how I got into trucking while riding along here. It started back when I was almost 16. I used to ride with my father on Pepsi. He used to drive a Pepsi truck back in 76, maybe 75, right before I turned 16. And I would go with him in the summer, and I would do the bottle hustling, what we called it. Every country store, every grocery store, wherever you were, they had very few convenience stores at the time. They were all country stores. They'd throw all the bottles outside. They had returnable glass bottles, and drivers had to pick them up, bring them in. So I would go with him in the summertime when it was really kicking busy, and I would get the bottles together. We had to separate them all from the Pepsi-Cola. Mountain Dew is what he had. Then you had RC Cola, Coca-Cola, all these other kind of drinks, cheer wine, 16 ounces. You had to separate them all down and get your stuff. And I would do that for him. Then when I went to the plant, when he would load up in the afternoon, I wasn't allowed inside. So I would wait outside around the gas pumps, talk to the drivers when they were coming in. And there was a fireman that drove for him on Saturday. He would go to Henderson and get a load of glass bottles so they could use to bottle Mountain Dew. Because they bottle for the entire little eastern region there at the time, so they needed a lot of glass. On Friday afternoon, he would get off at the fire. He was a fireman. And on Friday afternoon, he would get off at the fire department. He'd come by and check his truck at Pepsi plant because he hadn't driven it since the prior Saturday. And there was no mechanics there on Saturday. So if he got out there and there was anything wrong, he wouldn't even be able to make the delivery that day because nobody would be there to fix it. So he would check it out, make sure the tires were ready, make sure it would start up, everything was right. And I would always talk to him, and I was showing a big interest in trucks, and he'd let me start it up. He'd show me how to start it. And back then it was a cab over, and I think it had an 18-speed transmission, I believe he said. 13, I don't know, it's been a long time, I can't remember. But back in this truck, it had all the normal controls, the starter, turn the key on, hit a starter button, but there was a kill switch in the floor where you had to shut the fuel off because back before computers, you could get a diesel engine running, you could take the batteries out of it, the alternator off of it, and it would sit there and run until it ran out of fuel. So you would have to choke it off, or actually just turn the fuel off, shut it down. So he invited me the following day. He said, since you're riding with your daddy every day, he said, you can ride with me on Saturday. We'll just go to Henderson and back, and let you ride the big truck. So I did that. He had showed me how to start it and everything, how to put it in gear and everything. When we got loaded at Henderson, he pulls out of the dock, and it was like on a, what do you call it, not the main road, a service road. Business on the service road, and I would go down. Well, that's another story there. I'll tell that in a minute. All this stuff going on back there. I might come back over and do a video on it. But anyway, get back to the other story. Where was they at? I'll cut all this out. Anyway, I went and made it that Saturday morning, drove to Henderson, got the glass, pulled out. Oh, we're at the service road. He pulls out of the bottling company or the bottling glass factory, stops. He said, get in over here, you'll drive. So he let me drive that truck on the service road out to where we had to get onto the highway. Then we switched back. It was probably, how long a service road is, quarter of a mile or so. But I mean, I hadn't even drove a car yet. I'm out there driving and trying to trailer, changing the gears and everything. And so it goes on and on and on. I rode with him a few more times. He continued showing me things. Then one day, somebody else had drove his truck, and at that time, Pepsi-Cola had a big warehouse, and the trucks would drive in the warehouse and load, and then you would go out the back door, but you had to make a turn, and the guy that normally drove it during the week had parked it in the middle of the floor and cut his hand, and they carried him to the hospital to get his hand sewed up. So while he was gone, they needed to get that truck moved out of the way. Here I am, 15, 16 years old. All the other drivers that were driving, they were driving regular Pepsi trucks, 5-speed gas engines, just a normal truck, drink truck like you can see delivered in the stores. But the boss was out there, and he said, "We got to get that truck out of the door." I said, "I can move it." And he thought it was funny. He said, "Go ahead and move it. If you can move it, I'll give it to you." And everybody had tried to move it, they couldn't get it to start. But the other guy had already showed me the kill switch in the floor. That was the problem. They were trying to start it like a normal truck, but you had to push the kill switch down to get the fuel back into the system. So he doesn't bother with it. He just stands back there, and they're all got this smirk on their face. I walk over, get in, shut the door. As soon as I fired that thing up, they all came running. I throwed it in gear, eased out on the clutch, pulled it up, got it out of the way. They were hollering, "Stop, stop." Shut it down, cut it off, pulled the kill switch back up. He said, "How did you know how to do that?" I wouldn't tell him how I knew. I said, "Well, I just know, you know." And then one of the other guys said, "Yeah, he's always hanging around Bobby." That was the guy's name, Bobby Cahoon. Bobby probably showed him. And I said, "Yeah, he showed me." Then I showed him the kill switch. And the boss said, he said, "I'm not giving you that truck." He said, if I could move it, I could have it. He said, "I'm not giving it to you." And everybody laughed and all that. He said, "But when you get old enough, you want the job, I'll give it to you." And so he became my boss. I did get that job. And I think I was the youngest driver they ever had. I was 18 driving a trailer. Had a chauffeur's license back then. They have class A, B, and C now, but I had a chauffeur's license. And a chauffeur don't mean you drive a limousine. It means you had to get, I think, a 95 or better on the test to get a chauffeur's license. I think passing was 75 for a normal C license, but if you wanted a chauffeur's license, you had to get a 90, maybe it was a 90 and above, but I got 100 on it because Bobby had told me if I was going to drive, I needed to know that book. So I went down to the patrol station, got the book. I studied it from cover to cover. I memorized everything. And I forgot how many questions there were. There was either 40 or 50 questions on the test. And I blew through them in like 6 or 7 minutes. But a test is easy when you know the answer. I knew all the answers perfectly. No hesitation. I just boom, 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 boom. And I went right back to the guy and handed it to him and like, "You through already?" I said, "Yeah." And okay. So he took it and checked it off. He said, "That's the way you do it right there." And I got my Class A chauffeur. I got my chauffeur license. 18 years old. Driving a 18-wheeler down the highway. That's my beginning story. Drove a tractor trailer before I drove a car. There you go.